Okay, game. Vic,
Yep.
I'll start it.
Yep. Because then we start anyway, 8 o'clock for the official, right? So you could go ahead and yep.
Okay, game. Vic,
Yep.
I'll start it.
Yep. Because then we start anyway, 8 o'clock for the official. Because then we start anyway, 8 o'clock for the official.
Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
A meeting at the MSI, and we resolved among about 6 to 8 of
Science
us
and technology
members.
and
First, to form ASET Philippines
are
so that we
indispensable in the
continue to
modern
host
economy,
meetings
in the
here,
modern world.
but also to go on a MSI, and we resolved try to get support from the national government through the legislative and executive branches. We invest more in science and technology. So it started with a white paper, a position paper that we co-authored among 6 of us, namely Ernie Pernia, Cesar Saloma, Rodor Asansa, Toby Diarita Fataneo, and Aldin Colaba de la Sala, and myself.
So PAASE historically, in the past 10, 20 years for sure, have been collaborating with our counterparts here in the Philippines at various universities. And a lot of these interactions probably started as peer-to-peer. But thankfully, we have the Department of Science and
Homer,
in the Philippines,
Yes.
and they come up
videos
with
running.
counterparts
So
here
the
and very impactful programs. A lot of these actually enable ASE members that are based in the United States and other parts of the world to actually come here and do extensive research and academic partnerships and collaborations.
Well, I think that one of the good things that PAASE is doing is really trying to stay in touch with the researchers and the scientists here in the Philippines. So I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country, trying to align also their assistance towards the plans of the Philippine government.
It's very important that the PASE members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we'll know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that Filipinos can have to do science with their PASE counterparts. So these interactions, such as the conference that we're holding and the annual conferences that we have,
the Philippines and the scientists there have very unique perspective that adds to discoveries and inventions advancing in general the field.
These members, because they are part of an academy, it implies that they are productive. So they have publications, they have innovations, they have inventions, patents, and they have, they have an impact on society. Okay, so these are the people who can convince government, invest more in science and technology, and that was really the gist of our paper, our position paper in 2000. And it is Ernie Pernia who said that R&D by nature is expensive and it is a public good. So it is important for the government to take the lead in investing in R&D.
To increase the economic growth potential of the country, we cannot continue to just rely on traditional inputs into production as capital and labor. We also need to develop our expertise in science and technology and innovation so that we can come up with new systems new ways of doing things?
I think that science, researchers, industry, and even the government is really like an ecosystem of knowledge. So I think it doesn't really matter if you're coming from a private institution or a public institution, such as a state university. I think we all have a role to play to improve the research capabilities and scientific knowledge here in the country. I think it is about time for us to realize that one of our roles as academics, as researchers, as scientists, is to actually contribute to that global body of knowledge.
And the role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology global based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
Particularly because there's that deep desire. And what PASE does and can do more of is to promote this relationship between its members.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 40th APAMS or PASE anniversary group discussion on industry linkages. Thank you to our organizers for this session, and welcome to all our participants from academia, from the private sector and government. We think this is a very important topic, and PASE is very interested and committed to strengthening our linkages among ourselves and with industry leaders and early entrepreneurs as well. So without much further ado, may I now turn the stage to our co-hosts, Dr. Vic Ilag and Dr. Homer Pantua. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Giselle. Yeah, good day, everyone. Welcome to this session. I think we have a very exciting program today. But before that, my name is Vic Ilag, zooming in from Melbourne. I'd like to then introduce my co-moderator, Homer Pantua.
Hi, good morning, everyone in the Philippines and Asia, and good evening to those who are in the West. Thank you, Vic, for it's. I think this is going to be a really good group discussion, and I'm very excited to learn from the other presenters and our panelists.
All right. So just to start with a few housekeeping rules. So if you're not speaking, if you could kindly mute your mic so we would have better reception, transmission. And as Homer mentioned, so we have two parts of the program. So we'll have the first part would involve a presentation of some exciting Philippine companies, biotech companies. And then in between, because we'll have DOST Undersecretary Rowena Guevara, who has to leave around 9 o'clock. So we will have, after the third presentation, some interaction with her before she leaves. This will be followed by the next two companies, and then we will have the next panel discussion. And we would take questions as well from the audience. So you could just post that in the chat box in Zoom, and we'll hopefully try to also get those in YouTube. Without further ado, I'd just like to introduce our panel as well. So one of our panelists includes the Honorable Dr. Ernesto Pernia, who's currently Professor Emeritus of at the School of Economics at the University of the Philippines. He is also our most recent Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning and Director of NEDA, and responsible essentially architect for this booming Philippine economy prior to COVID. We also have in our panel academician and Honorable Dr. Willie Padolina, who's currently Senior Fellow at CIRCA, also former DOST Secretary and former President of NAST, and actually my former professor as well, who inspired me to go into biotech, or at least part of the reason. Okay, Homer?
Yeah, our next panelist is Dr. Rowena Guevara. She is the Undersecretary from the Department of Science and Technology. And our next panelist is Maui Arroyo. She is the founder of Ignite Impact Fund and also an adjunct professor at AIM.
Okay, our other panelists include Attorney Joey Achave, who's president of RightMed Inc. and senior vice president of business development of Unilab Inc. And Dr. Richard Abendan as well is with us. He's chief of party of USAID Stride Program and RTI International.
And our last two panelists is Dr. Isagani Padolina. He is the director of the research and development and QA for Pascual Pharma Company Corporation. And the last is Ms. Annalyn Lopez. She is the director of the Department of Agriculture Biotech Program.
All right, so we'll start the presentation now. Of course, the first presenting company is BioAssets, and it will be presented by my co-moderator, Homer Pantua. He's the founder of BioAssets. Homer has a PhD in biomedical sciences from UMass Worcester and a doctor of veterinary medicine at UP Los Baños. He has been with Genentech for a while and has actually been biologic scientist in 2011. So his passion is to develop therapies and vaccines for infectious diseases in humans and animals as well. So Homer, take it away.
Thanks, Vic. I just want to share with you a short informational presentation of regarding BioAssets, which is put together by my colleagues at BioAsset with the leadership of our marketing consultant, J.R. Lumugdang. Here it is.
The organizers of the session and the annual PAASE scientific meeting and symposium for this opportunity. We are from BioAssets, and this morning we will be presenting veterinary diagnostics and vaccine research. Animal health in the country are at a crossroads. Infectious diseases still remain the major cause of losses in animal production. For instance, the African swine fever has devastated the swine industry, not only in the Philippines, but also in other countries in Asia and in Europe. The avian flu has also been recently reported in the Philippines that caused a depopulation of around 40,000 chickens. These are not the only diseases that we face in the industry. There is a long list of priority infectious diseases in animals. Though there are diagnostics and vaccines available for most of them, there is still a need to develop more effective vaccines and parallel diagnostics to help the country respond to disease outbreaks. This presents a unique opportunity for research. On one hand, the global animal health industry is forecasted to grow by 6.1% in the next 6 years. This growth is mainly driven by the surge of population that leads to increasing demand for high-value animal protein and increasing demand for companion animals. However, the emergence of animal diseases negatively affects animal health and food production. This is where BioAssets come in, with our core values of delivering the most current and innovative diagnostic tools that will address challenges and unmet needs in the animal industry, specifically in resource-limited areas. Our company believes truth-seeking initiatives, that company that sticks to the science. A company that is focused on goals and projects. And we are a company that invests and supports its people to reach its full potential. We are a company that has genuine care for people, animal, and the environment. And we believe that we cannot achieve success alone. And we believe that we support partnership and collaboration. BioAssets is a company that can shape the future of animal disease prevention and control in the Philippines by coming up with new science-based technologies generated through collaboration with farmers, veterinarians, and animal industry stakeholders, promoting an innovation culture. And BioAssets has been doing this for the past 6 years as a holistic animal disease diagnostic solutions provider. Since 2014, when we established our veterinary diagnostics laboratory in Santo Tomas, Batangas, We have opened our doors to train veterinary professionals and students with the aim of promoting the importance of veterinary diagnostics in animal health. We have also engaged in research and development programs to establish self-reliance and sufficiency. Since last year, we have also established partnerships globally with Indical Bioscience in Germany and BioMeme in the United States to complement our diagnostic development program. And in keeping with our objective of serving the industry, BioAssets this year has expanded its operations in Northern Luzon. However, we know that there are gaps in the animal health industry, particularly in diagnostics. And to fulfill this mission, BioAssets will bridge the gap by strengthening our pillars of collaboration, mainly anchored on 4 areas: industry associations, establishing local animal science associations in the Philippines. We're also engaging with multinational partners in acquiring distribution rights to world-class products. We also have our local distribution and research partners that will create a local network through innovation. And we're also strengthening our research and development collaborations with research and academic institutions. We are no engineers at BioAssets, so we partnered with Indico Bioscience and BioMeme to bring the best available portable molecular diagnostic device that can make sample preparations and PCR runs in less than 45 minutes. So this will increase our responsiveness with point-of-need PCRs in the country. These technology complements our diagnostic kit development efforts that aims to generate a lyophilized PCR master mix for diseases of poultry, swine, and even companion animals. And we are doing this in collaboration with L Biotech, a startup company that produces molecular biology reagents. Through this platform, we can empower the diagnosticians and veterinarians to perform the diagnostic tests on their hands at the point of need. Not only are we developing tools for the industry, we're also in the process of bringing the diagnostics at the point of need through the BioAssets mobile laboratory. This is a laboratory that will enable rapid response to outbreaks, maintain community of operations, support capacity building, sound decision making, enable the research and surveillance while maintaining biosafety. And in terms of BioAssets precision vaccinology, we started this through the use of autogenous and customized vaccines. Autogenous vaccines are prepared from culture of microorganisms taken from the affected herd or flock. Our preparations are always inactivated to ensure safety and are being recognized and appreciated by farmers as a first line of defense against emerging diseases. It will also address antigenic variations where protective immune response is not afforded by commercial universal vaccines. With autogenous vaccines, we are basically turning bad bugs into vaccines. And this has resulted to the streamlining of animal disease responsiveness from detection of sick animals up to the delivery and administration of vaccines, all done within 6 to 8 weeks. And to strengthen our capabilities, BioAssets is furthering its research by establishing its own sequencing capability to support its research activities to better serve the animal industry. We are committed in improving the overall industry standards. That's why we're also exploring the potential of IGY in multiple applications. Research of such R&D will yield benefits for both diagnostics and therapeutics. All of these initiatives will be housed in one permanent facility in Santo Tomas, Batangas. We will be establishing our BioAssets Center for Veterinary Research and Diagnostics. This facility will embody our core values to provide us a strong foundation to establish a veterinary biotech atmosphere in our country. Our vision of being a veterinary biotechnology company is shaping up. And this will be backed by a solid team of scientists and research personnel involved in research and development, veterinary diagnostics, in marketing and product development. This is Bioassets, Bridging Gaps in Animal Health.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Homer. Pretty impressive. Didn't know that there was a biotech company like that already in the Philippines.
No, we're just starting.
All right, more.
Yeah, everything's
things to come.
exploratory.
All right, okay. All right, so go to the second one, Homer.
So our next speaker is Neil Grimes. Neil is an international company director and management consultant. He is an independent thinker and operator with extensive experience in strategy development, business planning, and international business management across Asia and Australia. Neil specialized in helping others achieve their business goals and to get their projects off the ground and into production to benefit the owners, communities, and economies. So I'll be sharing Neil's presentation.
Well, good morning, everyone, from cold, wet Melbourne. And it's a real pleasure to be involved in this very auspicious group. And I am the only non-scientist in the room. So this is very much a business presentation and also looking at our R&D. So go ahead, Homer, and let's play the tunes.
My presentation today is entitled From Land and Sea and describes the future of our business. Plantex was established in Australia in the 1980s as a mineral exploration and development company, but we've modified our approach and our focus, and around 2010 became involved in R&D for biofuels and high-value nutraceuticals from microalgae, and we've evolved our business to now focus on agriculture and aquaculture projects in the Philippines. We have properties and projects in Leyte and Samar ready for development, including rice and cassava milling, fish farming, and R&D with seaweeds, that's Halaminia species, and Pro-N-K, which is a protein enhancement technology. We entered into an agreement in 2018 with Agri-Nurture, who is a listed company on the Philippine Stock Exchange, and we'll commence construction of our rice cassava project shortly. We also will acquire a rice mill in Arayat near Pampanga, which will form the basis of our rice trading and rice milling business. Our key people include Peter Stretter, our Executive Chairman, who's a barrister and solicitor with a long history of very successful new company creation and founding and developing companies and products for markets and listing on the Australian Stock Exchange. Mike McMahon is our Executive Director of the Philippines operations. He's a farmer and has also been involved in successfully developing fish hatcheries and fish growing operations near Tacloban. I'm a MBA and CPA, a director of a number of different companies, and have been involved with the military in my history, and very focused now on getting these projects developed and in operation for the Philippines and for our shareholders. Our business plan is to establish our new operations team at Arayat with Mike as our leader in the Philippines, and then establish our rice milling, importation, packaging and distribution operations. Construction of the facilities in Tacloban is our major project focus, but operations for rice importation and sales through SUI will also be very useful for us and at Arayat. Our R&D projects are with the University of Philippines and Tarlac Agriculture University and the UP Visayas. We think that these will have a great opportunity for future growth in the Philippines. Our SUI project is in Tacloban. We own the property. We will acquire through the ANI transaction the $100 million 100 million pesos to build this project. And we'll be constructing that from essentially the next couple of months. The next phase is coconut processing, which will also use local farmer product. And then we'll move into the aquaculture at Samar, which will allow us to produce fin fish for the domestic and export markets. The product at Riot is going to be rice. It's an established mill and complex, and it's currently owned and operated by AgriNurture that will soon become part of the Plentex Group. The rice mill at Suey will be able to produce around about 15,000 tonnes a year of polished food grade rice. That could go out under the brand Sungrown, which is owned by AgriNurture, and we may also develop a local brand. We'll be the first of our kind to use waste rice husk as the fuel for our dryers. We'll be able to buy wet parley and then dry it on site and use that to also provide the waste heat for drying cassava, which will also be integrated with the rice mill using the common rice husk burners to do the drying of the product. So again, we'll be independent of weather and able to buy product fresher and more direct from the farmers to enable us to produce a quality food grade product. In the first stage, it will be cassava chips, but then we'll provide the opportunity to go into flour and other types of products. Our coconut processing facility will be the whole coconut. We expect to extract all 7 products from the coconut, including the oils, coconut water, of course, cocoa flour, peat, fibre for matting, and then coconut shell, which we'll either use for energy in our boilers or we'll sell as activated carbon. It will essentially be a no-waste process, and we'll be producing all of those products from coconuts which are grown in the Visayas area, more specifically Leyte and Samar. The development of this will take another 12 months after we've completed our ASX listing in 2021. On the R&D front, we have the Pro-NK product, which is a very low-cost protein-enhanced feed, which can be used for both agricultural purposes and aquaculture. The studies to date using UPV, TAU have been very successful. The USAID has provided STRIDE grants in the past, and we are the technical and commercial partner for the development of this. The next steps will be to develop the process to an industrial scale and then commercialise that for sale. Our next product is the Halamenia, which is a red seaweed found naturally in the Philippines, but it's under threat from overfishing and wild harvesting, which is unregulated. There are some extracts in this product which are extremely valuable, and for example, the lambda carrageenan is about $100 for 5 grams. Using our connections with the University of Philippines, Professor Trono and Professor Montano, they've developed the methodologies to propagate these very rare and very valuable seaweeds from spores, and we'll now develop the processes to grow these in natural areas, but essentially farming, and then focus on the extract process to make sure that we can commercialise the extraction of these very highly valuable elements. Our 5-year plan is essentially to focus on operating the Riot rice mill, building the Suey project, so getting our rice and cassava business up and running. That'll be the first really important phase. Continue with the developing of our fish product, which is tilapia now from Suhi in our process water dam, and then move to Samar to develop the larger scale fin fish. Our R&D projects will continue throughout, and then we'll move into the coconut project phase. So the business will eventually be fully integrated with food for humans, waste products being used in that production. The waste products also going into eventually developing aqua feed for our agriculture and aquaculture projects. In summary, we have the backing and the drive to deliver these projects and a good team that's going to be driving the outcomes. Our projects are shovel ready. We have the agreements and engineering and management team in place. Agri-Nurture is a strong and well-developed partner for us, and we have complementary businesses in both Australia and the Philippines, which will come together quite well. We'll explore management and operational synergies as we go ahead, but our projects there will develop significant value for local employment, local development, and will provide a focal point for the North Tacloban area for employment and also food supply. Thank you very much for your attention this morning, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. Our next speaker isn't logged in yet. I got an email from him. He's running a bit late. So we'll shift a bit and probably have our next presenter. So that would be Will Carlo?
Carlo?
Yep.
Yeah. So
you're going to introduce Carlo?
Yes, Carlo.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, Carlos Sandoval is an assistant professor at University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and is currently a PhD candidate in biochemistry at the University of Cambridge. He started his career as a research assistant at the enzyme laboratory at Biotech UPLB and at the biochemistry laboratory at IPB UPLB, and later joined the Institute of Crop Science as assistant professor of agricultural biotechnology. Prior to pursuing a PhD, he co-founded L Biotech Incorporated together with a fellow UPLB alumni, which envisions to reduce the cost of molecular biology research and applications in the Philippines by commercializing locally produced recombinant enzymes.
Of this annual scientific meeting, especially for this group discussion, for inviting me to present in your online forum. I am Carlos Sandoval. I'm currently here at the University of Cambridge doing a PhD in biochemistry, but I'm also the co-founder of L Biotech Incorporated, which I will present to you this afternoon and give you an overview of who we are and what we are doing. So I entitled my presentation as L Biotech Inc. producing local molecular biology reagents.
If I can interrupt, please. I can't see the presentation. It's
look at the presentation.
Displaying.
Yeah, Homer. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not showing the video.
Oh, it's not showing.
Allow me to start by
the
importance of the application of
restart again.
We'll start.
So throughout the last 2 decades, I would say the application of molecular biology has expanded tremendously. And this is because of the discovery and development of various technologies such as next generation sequencing, the different omics technologies such as proteomics, genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, gene or genome editing tools such as CRISPR-Cas9. And this has
so we're making some technical difficulties.
Many fields of science,
let me figure this out,
as well as the different industries that we have. And there are a lot of applications of molecular biology, and
okay, let's do it again.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Good day, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank PAASE and the organizers of this annual scientific meeting, especially for this group discussion, for inviting me to present in your online forum. I am Carlos Sandoval. I'm currently here at the University of Cambridge doing a PhD in biochemistry, but I'm also the co-founder of L Biotech Incorporated, which I will present to you this afternoon and give you an overview of who we are and what we are doing. So I entitled my presentation as L Biotech Inc. producing local molecular biology reagents, one enzyme at a time. And as I go along, I hope you will realize why the presentation is aptly titled. So allow me to start by stressing the importance of the application of molecular biology. So throughout the last 2 decades, I would say the applications of molecular biology has expanded tremendously. And this is because of the discovery and development of various technologies such as next generation sequencing, the different omics technologies such as proteomics, genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, gene or genome editing tools such as CRISPR-Cas9. And this has significantly advanced many fields of science and as well as the different industries that we have. And there are a lot of applications of molecular biology, and I could go on for the remaining time that I have for this presentation, but I'd like to focus on one particular application that has been in the global spotlight in the last 6 months, I would say, and that is molecular diagnostics. I think it's safe to say that at this point, almost every household would have heard of the term PCR, RT-PCR, or PCR test, or any variations of these terms. And I'd like to take that RT-PCR as an example. So if you're going to carry out RT-PCR, you will need at least 3 to 4 enzymes depending on the protocol that you are using. So these enzymes, and I will not elaborate on what their functions are, would be DNase, reverse transcriptase, which stands for RT and RT-PCR, RNase, and DNA polymerase, which is the enzyme actually used for the PCR diagnostic test. And until recently, 3 of these 4 enzymes are imported. And in the Philippines, most molecular biology enzymes are expensive because they are imported, and this is due to the importation costs and taxes. And of course, one way to alleviate this high prices of molecular biology enzymes is to be able to locally produce these reagents. And that would lead to the significant cut of costs for molecular biology applications, be it research or teaching or in the industry. So this is where L Biotech wants to come in. So L Biotech Incorporated was founded by a group of LB people, if you would allow me, with the aim to commercialize locally produced high-quality molecular biology reagents. So I use the term LB people because all of us at one point in our lives have lived in LB or was affiliated to UPLB. So just to give you a brief timeline of how L Biotech came about. So it's all started during late 2013 as a balik scientist project of Dr. Vic Ilag. So I guess you all know Vic at this point. And his balik scientist project was sort of a proof of concept that we can produce this molecular biology enzymes, and we started working on PFD-DNA polymerase. So I was then a research assistant at the biochemistry laboratory of the Institute of Plant Breeding, and I remember when Vic came to the lab and talked to 2 of my mentors to start this project. He brought with him 2 plates with E. coli strains that would be used for the expression and production of DNA polymerases. So my initial task was to use whatever resources that was available to me in the laboratory to piece together a protocol and optimize a protocol to produce this PFU DNA polymerase. And by early 2014, we already had an optimized protocol, really yielding us high quality purified PFU polymerase, and which was giving us hundreds of thousands of enzyme units. And I was only working with 1 liter cultures of E. coli back then. So right then and there, we knew that we've achieved the proof of concept that we wanted, and we knew that it would be economically feasible to commercialize this enzyme, and we will be very competitive in terms of the pricing if we were be successful in doing so. So in 2015, there were initial talks about forming a startup, and finally in April of 2016, L Biotech Incorporated was officially registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And also this year, we launched our second enzyme, which is BSDNA polymerase. In 2017, we had a MOA, or a Memorandum of Agreement, with UPLB through UPLB Foundation Incorporated, for UPLB to be our marketing, or not marketing, sorry, for our production arm of the enzymes. So since the technology or the protocol for the production of these enzymes were done in the biochemistry laboratory, so we were able to register that as a technology or a protocol, and then through a license, sort of a licensing agreement, L Biotech pays UPLB to produce the enzyme for it, and then for our company, and then only the ownership of the DNA materials used, or the constructs, remained, of course, with L Biotech. So we had a material transfer agreement in place under this Memorandum of Agreement. And in 2018, we released our next product, or the PFU DNA polymerase. And I'd like to take this opportunity to just go through these products that we currently have. So we have PFU DNA polymerase, and this is a DNA polymerase. So most of you probably who have worked with PCR know Taq polymerase. So this is another DNA polymerase. However, it's 8 times more accurate than Taq polymerase, therefore it's high fidelity, and it has proofreading ability, therefore it can correct the misincorporated nucleotides. And then the PFU-X7 is just a variation of this, and sometimes it's marketed by other companies under the brand name Fusion, because it's a fusion protein. So this 7K kilodalton protein, which is fused to the DNA polymerase, enhances the processivity of the enzyme, allowing it to amplify longer fragments, which with higher fidelity as well. And then we have BSD-DNA polymerase, which is a very important enzyme for diagnostics, particularly for loop-mediated isothermal amplification, or LAMP. So compared to, say, PCR, where you need to incubate your reaction in 3 different temperatures, when you're using BST, you just need to incubate in 1 temperature, because the enzyme has the ability to displace the double-stranded DNA strand, and at the same time amplify the new strand. So fast forward to 2020, I just like to highlight this, that one of our interactions with UPLB currently is we are involved in UPLB's COVID-19 response. So particularly under the project fast tracking of COVID-19 testing in the Philippines, local production of enzymes for development of LAMP-based test kit for SARS-CoV-2, and of course our involvement in this would be for the production of the enzymes, and we provide it to the research team for their development of the LAMP-based test kit. So one of the few things that I want to convey to you are the challenges that we have had to overcome, or are still overcoming this stage. So I would say that we're still having birthing pains with Albiotech. So one would be the slow progress due to limited staff. So this is slow progress in terms of the research and development, because we're still doing research and development um, even at a slow capacity. And of course, the uh, production of the enzymes, and also the sales and marketing. And another is convincing clients to test our enzymes against commercial enzymes they're currently using. So sometimes we really have to follow up, because if they're happy with the enzymes that they're using, um, sometimes they really won't bother to test the enzymes, even if they give them a sample for free. And I think this is common for even for new products that are being introduced by other companies. If they give you samples, sometimes you just really don't use it. As a researcher, I am guilty that sometimes if the distributor gives me a product for testing, I usually don't use it. And I think this has to be followed up if you really want to get your product out there. And we've been doing this. And lastly, and I think this the thing that we really need to overcome right now is the need for a dedicated sales and marketing team, or ARM. We are understaffed, and that is because we need to pick up the sales so that we get an influx of funds to hire more people. And I think that is the most pressing challenge, and like an overarching challenge for us right now. However, looking ahead, so we want our enzyme to be recognized as equivalent to imported ones. This is not to generalize, but still, one problem is some people would have this preconceived notion of locally produced products being substandard. And I acknowledge right now, and I'm very happy that there is an aggressive campaign for supporting local, and we want to ride that wave of supporting local products. And we also want to forge linkages with other local biotech startups. So, for example, we been trying to forge a linkage with MTech, because we have an enzyme that they are using, the LAMP for the LAMP-based test kits, which is BST polymerase. And of course, if we, like I said, if we pick up our sales and then we get more funds, so we can funnel more funds into research and development as well, so hire more staff for that. But just to give an idea, right now we are still continuing our development of our products, and we have several enzymes that are in our pipeline, which we have already baseline experiments for, such as reverse transcriptase and T4-DNA ligase, which is routinely used for molecular cloning. So I think this is where I'm going to end. So basically, we are a company which produces local enzymes for molecular biology, and if that is the only takeaway that you get from my talk, then I would be very happy. And that L-Biotech, you know that L-Biotech exists. So for further information or inquiries, please feel free to shoot me an email at cmcsandoval@gmail.com, and I will be very glad to address your inquiries. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, all right. Okay. So thank you very much, Carlo. I've noticed that we have Aidan Cruz of Herbanext dialing in. Already, he's already in the Zoom room. And I was wondering if, Aidan, whether you're ready with your presentation?
Yes, Vic, good morning. I have the presentation ready.
Okay, so yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction. So Aidan is actually R&D head of Herbanex Laboratories, a manufacturing company based in Bago City, Negros Occidental. So Aidan deals with the development of new herbal products and nutraceuticals, while also managing collaborations between the company and various universities and clients across the Philippines. So having represented the Philippines and ASEAN delegate in Korea's BioPlus 2019. So Aidan acknowledges the need for the development of industrial biotech in the Philippines amidst the fast-growing global bioeconomy. And he'll present us in his presentation how biotech plays a key role in driving forward our government's investments in national R&D. All right, Aidan, take it away.
All right, so I'll be sharing my screen.
Yep.
It's a pre-recorded presentation. So.
Yep. Aidan, there's no volume, I think. Hello, Aidan, I think the volume.
Aidan, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So there's no volume showing in the presentation?
No.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
So you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, yeah, I could repeat it then. Oh, yeah. While Aidan's preparing, just to let you know, looks like Undersecretary Rowena Guevara hasn't arrived, so we will just proceed with the presentations then. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me try that again.
Good evening, everyone. Just to introduce myself, I am Phil Aiden Cruz, currently a Research and Development Head at Herbanex Laboratories Incorporated. Now, before I get to the bulk of my presentation, I just want to give a brief overview of the company I work in. Herbanex Inc. is a herbal products and nutraceutical toll manufacturing company based in Bago City on the island of Negros. The company was founded back in 2001 by Mr. Philip S. Cruz, who also happens to be my dad. And thanks to a lot of support from the DOST, Herbanex has become one of the first companies in the Philippines to engage in the manufacturing of biopharmaceuticals from botanical sources. Now to get to the meat of the discussion, an overview of biotechnology in the Philippines. The Philippines, as we all know, is a country of about 7,000 islands with a population of about 105 million people. We are known to be primarily agricultural, with 45% of our land dedicated to crop production. We are strategically located in a gateway between the huge Asian market and the West, and are known for being foreign investment friendly and having a big pool of highly trainable labor force. The Philippines is also the third biggest pharmaceutical market in the ASEAN region. All these factors would lead you to believe that the Philippines is in a good position to enter the global bio-based economy. But the biggest ace up our sleeve remains to be our biodiversity. The Philippines having the second highest biodiversity for plants than anywhere else on the planet, and our waters containing about 20% of all known aquatic species. With this wealth of genetic resources, it comes to no surprise that our soils and waters have churned out a portfolio of bioactive compounds and natural products throughout the years. Listed here are some examples: erythromycin, coming from soil bacteria from Iloilo; ziconotide, coming from the cone snails of the Visayan Seas; and lagunde, which comes from a crude extract that has undergone over 20 years of research and development. But the Philippines is no new player to the field of biotechnology. In 1990, we became the first ASEAN state to establish a biotechnology regulatory system. This paved the way to the creation of the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines and allowed for our participation in the global agricultural biotechnology sector. In her national policy statement back in the year 2001, President Arroyo emphasized how engagement in modern biotechnology must be coordinated between the different government agencies involved, including the Departments of Agriculture, Science, Health, Environment, and Trade. The The following Philippine councils listed here are in charge of coordinating and managing all R&D activities related to biotechnology in the country. The following list describes biotechnology priority areas for the year 2017 to 2022, and some of these may seem familiar to you, like research on dengue and research on drug discovery and development. Priority has also been placed in the development of vaccines and biologics, as well as strain improvement and genomic studies for aquatic species. Some national initiatives with the government include the 2 Plus Lunas program for drug discovery, which has seen about $30 million in investment and is coordinated between 28 institutions throughout the country. Other initiatives like the Philippine Innovation Program provide scientists with the necessary training to realize the commercial value of their research. Other incentives and financial support schemes by the DTI and DOST are meant to facilitate the cooperation between private agencies and universities and promote the emergence of local startups and SMEs. Now let's take a look at some developments in the Philippine biotechnology sector in snapshots. Microbial inoculants and biofertilizers primarily developed by UP Los Baños have proven to be one of the major products of the Philippine agricultural biotech sector. The country also heavily engages in the R&D and production of genetically modified crops like BT eggplant, BT corn, and golden rice. More popularly seen in the news is the development of diagnostic kits like the ones shown here, made by Manila Health Tech, for COVID-19 and dengue. Another interesting invention is the Axis knee system, which is a knee implant created to support the unique architecture of Asian knees. In terms of biopharmaceuticals, numerous programs have been set to mine for valuable small molecules and therapeutic peptides from marine snails and microorganisms. The development of botanical drugs, such as those currently being tested against COVID-19, may also be considered a form of biopharmaceutical development. The Philippines also hosts a national network of bioinformatics research and service facilities in the form of the Philippine Genome Center, which has core facilities located in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Also widespread around the country are companies that engage in classical fermentation systems like breweries and distilleries. However, more recent trends in functional food research, such as probiotics, are also seen as emerging industries. As we can see, the Philippines does possess a well-developed R&D landscape. However, it is not yet one of particular commercial success when compared to some of our ASEAN neighbors. Of the 54 countries surveyed globally, the Philippines ranks 50th in terms of performance in the biotechnology sector, almost at par with neighboring Indonesia. This relatively low rank is conserved among the 6 individual metrics used in the survey, namely IP protection, intensity of research, enterprise investment or ease of business, education, foundations, and policies. Thailand, on the other hand, despite ranking 45th, shows particular strengths in biotech-related education, and both Thailand.
Did we lose it?
I think we lost him.
That's it. It's stalled. Is that Homer?
Yeah. Aidan, are you still there? I think we lost his. He lost his connection.
But he's still here, though. It says. Okay, so I think we'll probably proceed with the next, because I think that was more towards the end already. I think my understanding from his slides.
Yeah, that's towards the end already.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we go ahead with the last presentation, then we go to the next session. Yep. And it looks like, as I earlier mentioned, looks like Undersecretary Rowena Guevara has was not able to make it and join us today. So we'll go ahead. So have an introduction then for Dr. Robles.
Let me
go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go introduce. So yeah, Dr. Robles is currently Professor Emeritus of the University of the Philippines at Los Baños. He has served the university for 43 years, and he's currently involved in extension activities, particularly those that help dairy farmers in the country. It just shows you that being entrepreneur is not only for the young ones, but also for the young ones. So yeah, please go ahead. Is it playing?
Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us to this 40th Philippine American Academy of Scientists and Engineers. Let me introduce to you the Philippine Asian Biotechnology Research and Development Corporation, PABRD. Our interest is to upgrade the Philippine dairy industry with better genes of existing, introduced dairy animals as well as local BP animals. We would like to improve them. Another areas of concern is our existing pastures to support more milk the most economical way. Pasture and forages are the basic feedstuffs of ruminants. Therefore, our guiding principle is better genes and better nutrition. Briefly, what is the state and challenges of the Philippine dairy industry? We import more than 98% of our requirements for dairy and its byproduct. This is a big drain to the country's foreign reserve. Our introduced dairy animals produces only 8 to 10 liters per day. They are large size, poor feed efficiency, and having problems with fertility. There is no systematic feeding program, and record keeping is a problem in most dairy farms. Cost-effective feeds is also a big problem. We want to have a continuous supply of good quality roughage year-round. From GA 2020, they said that the future cow is green. What do we mean by that? They're supposed to be feed efficient, fertile, medium-sized, heat tolerant, less greenhouse emission, and a dual purpose, beef and dairy. Beef and dairy is more suitable for Filipino dairy farmers. In dairy production, the male serve us mostly for beef production as billers and fatteners. How was PABRD born? How did we get started? It was sometime in 2014 when our group in the academy met former Senator Ramon Magsaysay Jr., son of our former President of the Philippines, owner of RJM Development Corporation, an experienced dairy farmer, and they have variety of enterprises. His son, known as Paco Magsaysay, is an entrepreneur and founder of Carmen's Best Ice Cream. Both of them operate and arrange and manage the Real Fresh Dairy Farm and the Laguna Creamery. Therefore, our group, myself as ruminant nutritionist, and our friend from Australia, an experienced dairy geneticist with good biotech background. We have also a reproductive physiologist and doctor of veterinary medicine, a dairy processing and food microbiology expert, and an agronomist and pasture expert. We get together and form the PABRD. What are our activities? We got involved in animal genomics R&D, also in plant genomics R&D. We are improving the genetic merit of RF dairy herd and other dairy farmers. We do training and plan to establish a dairy farm training center to be accredited by TESDA. Our value proposition: PABRD have access to improved genetics. Our partner is Genetics Australia and Hollis Milk brand of RFDF. We We are connected with UPLB and open to cooperative training and dairy products R&D. We wish that everyone benefits in the overall value chain process of dairy production and processing. PEBARD is one of the industry partners in two projects supported by USAID Stride Carwin. Phase 1 is about establishing the base for future breeding. The universities involved are UPLB, Bohol Island State University, and a counterpart university in USA, the North Carolina State University, for the training in genomic DNA, isolation methods, and other genotype typing technologies. USAID Stride Carwin encouraged collaborative project among academia and the industry. PEBARD is also the industry partner is to commercialize the local breed to be developed. Genotyping, kappa-casein, beta-lactoglobulin, A2 beta-casein is being offered by PEBARD in partnership with UPLB. Another project not presented in this slide is the Philippine local forages, a sustainable feed alternative in dairy cattle. Tissue culture in this study of hybrid Napier enabled the project and developed protocols that are prerequisite in the genetic improvement of forages through molecular breeding or use of other technologies like irradiation and chemical mutation. We hope that the additional knowledge in this will promote large-scale production of selected forages in our partner institution. About crossbreeding. By dairy animal crossbreeding, we increase the rate of improvement of important but low heritable traits. Favorable genes are introduced, production improved by 48%, at least 10% improvement in fertility, health, and survival. We are exposing the use of 3-breed to optimize heterosis. It has been shown that 2-breed limits extent of heterosis and 4-breed limits influence of breed. Genetic Australia is exposing a 3-breed rotational crossbreeding, Holstein, Jersey, and Aussie Red. Let us have a quick look of the characteristic of the 3 breeds being proposed. Holstein is known for its high milk production, but very big breed. Under tropical climate, they have fertility and health issues. Aussie Red developed in Australia has good production capability, fertility, calving age, disease resistance, and of medium size. Jersey, the smallest dairy breed, has good milk component, high percent fat. Jersey is the most heat tolerant among the temperate dairy breeds. Calving age, and Jersey is also a good mammary gland in shape and attachment. Results of our crossbreeding at RFGF, we have an F1 crossbreed 3-way cross, Sahiwal and Holstein by Aussie Red. Beautiful body conformation. We have an F1 crossbred 3-way cross, Sahiwal, Holstein, and Jersey. What is the proof of concept that we have? At the moment, and more coming, we have 4 samples of Holstein, Sahiwal, Jersey, 2 samples of Holstein, Sahiwal, and Aussie Red. Improvement from the dam on daily average range from 30 to 70% with Jersey cross. The F1 3-way cross are already greater than 8 to 10 liters average in the first year of lactation. The F1 3-way are smaller compared to its counterpart, Sahiwal Holstein dam, which is more than 500 kilograms, suggesting better feed efficiency. The F1 3-way cross seems to be fertile. In closing, we are looking forward to a better local dairy breed in the Philippines through the initiatives of PEBARD. There are a lot of challenges, but just the same, we wish everyone a happy dairy farming.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Robles. Yeah, so we'll move now to our next session then, where we involve our panelists. So I think Homer will put up the screen, our slides. Yeah. So I think go ahead, Homer.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think from the discussion that we would like to cover three topics, essentially address three questions. So we'll go through them one by one. So with the first question on does a biotechnology ecosystem exist in the Philippines? What we would like to go go through the panel and take their opinion. Then of course we'd like to have some interaction with the presenters as well, and we would take some questions from the public as well. So may I start with Secretary Ernie? Dr. Ernie Pernia, if you could, I think Dr. Ernie's in.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, thank you, Ernie.
Yeah, well, I'll just break the ice and let the others, carry on the multiplication of the ice, ice cubes. Anyway, yes, very impressive presentations. The thing is, these discoveries, these exercises, experimentations, these are not well publicized. So I think our problem has always been that we are hiding our light under a bushel. So it doesn't illuminate. It doesn't. It is not shown to a larger community, to a larger scale in terms of the country, in terms of marketability, commercial viability, and also exports. And even before talking about exports, we should really be able to develop all these industries, these activities to satisfy local consumption.
Local first, yep.
Local consumption, so that we don't import so much. We have a very import-intensive food industry. Most of what we consume in value terms are imported, and this is because we have been a small scale in terms of development, rather than scaling them up to a point that it really satisfies domestic requirements before we even think about going into the export market. So I think it's important that we have a government. We have a very active support from the government. So linkage and partnership between the government, the private sector, academe, meaning the scientific community, which is you guys, and then so that these things are better known. The government has to be really more active in supporting these activities. The government has to be more cognizant of the actual and potential benefits of supporting, and not only financially but also morally, so that these activities are scaled up. And as I've said, they satisfy domestic requirements.
Yep.
And beyond that, we can go to the export market. The thing is, the government has to have a friendly relationship with the private sector, with scientists, with the academe. It should not be an adversarial or a kind of detached relationship. So that is I think that is what is missing. And then even within the government, we need a critical mass of agencies that would support all these endeavors. So for example, DOST, not only DOST, DTI, We also NEDA, but also we need Department of Agriculture, which includes the marine resources that we have, and Department of Health, Department of the Environment, and maybe DICT. If we have all these 7 or 8 pertinent government agencies unified and supporting all these scientific endeavors, I think we can advance faster, and these endeavors can result in more production, and it will result in better fruition of our efforts. So, for example, last week I was in a webinar with on some having to do with our marine resources, and a scientist from the University of San Carlos, Dr. A biologist. He was saying that they have been trying to harvest this carrageenan, brown carrageenan, for culture and then processing, and harvest, culture, and then processing. So that, and because this carrageenan has multiple uses, and also commercial, it can be commercially viable. And so he asked me to connect with our government agencies. So I, shortly after that, I wrote Secretary of Agriculture, and he on the same day, on the same afternoon, he replied that he's going to have he's going to have his officials look into it, and within the week, and there should be a report on this after the week, at the end of the week. So this kind of thing, this kind of linking scientists with government, with the private sector, with industry, these are very important efforts that should be done by those in government as well as those in the private sector.
Sure.
So that the linkage, the partnership between government, private sector, academe, the scientists will not only be friendly but also synergistic, and more productive, and more with greater ability to really scale up and produce the results that are feasible from these activities.
Okay.
So maybe with that I can let the rest of the
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pernia, Dr. Ernie. Yeah. So may I probably direct to Dr. Willie Padlina? Sir, I remember you were the first with biotech. When I remember with a student, biotech was just starting. So what's your impression now after probably 30 years or so? The progress we've made and where we're going. So get your thoughts.
Thank you, Vic, for this kind invitation to share a few thoughts. And I'm very much impressed by the presentations, and I hope that the momentum that they have gained will continue to hasten the development of a biotech industry in the Philippines. To answer your question, let me backtrack a little bit, just very briefly, to the year 1979. That was during martial law, and the Minister of Science then was Dr. Emil Javier. Upon the behest or initiative of President Marcos, the two biggest biotech companies then were invited to the Philippines, their CEOs, Peter Farley of Citus and Robert Swanson of Genentech. So they came over and they made the recommendation that to the president that, sir, we cannot relate with too many institutions. So you better put up just one biotech institute that we can talk to. So that's the history of what's called the National Institutes of Biotechnology and applied microbiology.
Yep.
Then we were approached by Carl Goran Heden, who was then heading the team for the establishment of the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. I hope you remember that. It
Yes, sir.
is one is in Trieste, the other one is in Thailand. We were bidding for the Asian Center. Unfortunately, we did not get it. Then, of course, we got a big grant from JICA. I think it was a 3-year grant. And we related with one of the biggest industrial fermentation companies in Japan, Kyowa Hako, who also gained interest in doing this. Then we had the pharmaceutical development program of UNIDO that was considering the production of antibiotics, particularly penicillin. I was able to get a good strain of penicillin. I will not tell you how we got it. I think it's still in biotech. Unfortunately, this project did not fly. And of course, we're still importing a lot of this stuff. We have one of the best molasses in the world. Our problem is the corn steep liquor that we need to import. And that's part of the fermentation medium to produce large-scale antibiotics. So having said that, the purpose of biotech then was to really step up into modern biotechnology. Many of the products that you see now are still traditional biotechnology. But let me say that the Philippines has gained enough ground for us to be probably the only one in ASEAN that has released genetically modified crops. And we continue to gain approvals of many of these. I don't know which are locally, how many are still locally bred. I see from the website of ISA that there are many approvals from multinational companies. I think we should step up our effort to get our public research institutions to produce genetically modified crops and distribute them as a public good, freely available, non-exclusive, and non-competitive, because this will then benefit a lot of the resource poor farmers. Now, having said that, let me just deal briefly with one very important aspect of the ecosystem, and that's the regulatory system. I think we should change it to a product-based regulatory system. I have not succeeded in being an advocate to change it from being process-based, which is the essence of the joint circular that the Department of Agriculture is using, and which is also the basis of the discussions of NCBP, the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines. We should get out of a process-based regulatory system and make it product-based. That way, we will screen for safety and other aspects, nutritional, etc., organically grown crops, conventionally bred crops, and of course, the genetically modified crops. I don't know how the pharmaceutical industry is faring with the regulatory system. I was one of those who wrote the initial document for NCBP, and it covers the pharmaceutical industry. But to date, I don't know, and I may be wrong, whether the discussions in NCBP have involved the pharmaceutical industry. I see many advertisements selling recombinant vaccines, and of course, humulin, which is used for our insulin, is recombinant, and many other enzymes, I think, that are being marketed both in animal health and human health. I don't know if they have been discussed with the NCBP. I'm not saying we should put another layer, but the purpose was to really get an overview of the ecosystem. I see in our discussions that there are attempts to look at the therapeutic side, and that's very welcome. And I hope that they will be evaluated not because they use recombinant methods, but because of their products. Lastly, one of the aspects that I thought would enhance our biotech ecosystem would be an intensified efforts in microbiology, applied microbiology, which we are not paying much attention to. In the study of academician Raimundo, there are only 8 institutions in the Philippines offering microbiology, and only one that is what do you call that? There's only one that is engaged in offering a graduate degree. So I don't know how that will be enhanced. Maybe we should look at that, because a lot of our new things in producing enzymes, etc., are all related to deriving them from microbial systems. So let me end there. There's still a lot of things we can discuss, but just to break the ice, as Secretary Pernia said, let me just end there, and we contribute more later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reedy. I'll probably address to your question. I'll probably call on Joey Ochave regards to regulatory. Probably Joey could comment on that. And then as a second question to Joey, given the interaction, usually biotech has succeeded because of the collaboration between small biotech and a bigger company, a pharma, or a big biotech company. So Joey, are you there?
Let me just unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and
Okay.
clear.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Vic, and I'd like to commend the presenters for their presentations. But since we're already into it, Secretary Pernia and Secretary Padulina have both broken the ice. So let me just pulverize it. Let me talk about regulatory, and I'm not just talking about regulatory in terms of the GMOs, but regulatory in general. And I think this is a problem for for the scientists and for those technology developers. I think to a certain extent I have a unique vantage point because I'm both with the private sector. I've been with the OST as well, helping the OST for probably more than 2 decades now. Initially in my capacity as a member of the NCBP and later on the DOST BC by Safety Committee. And I'm also with the Governing Council for almost 10 years now, I think, with the PCHRD of the PCHRD. So I've seen how DOST has really supported a lot of the R&D projects, but I've seen also the frustration and my own personal frustration in not seeing a lot of products coming into fruition. And let me talk about regulatory initially. Dr. Padulina knows exactly what my position is with respect to the product process debate in GMOs. Okay, and I think to a certain extent I share his sentiments. No, but that will require not just my effort but the collegial effort, not just on the part of DOST-BC, but I think on the part of the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines, which is now a higher organ. That's the policy-making body of with respect to regulation of the GMOs. So it's no longer within the it's not within the purview of DOST-BC, of which I am a part, but it's now in the NCBP, which is the policy-making body. But let me talk about regulatory in general. Anyone who wants to play in the healthcare sector, whether it's to come up with drugs, come up with supplements, come up with diagnostics, etc. The thing that I've seen in PCHRD, of course, and in all my in most of my interactions with the scientists here and technology developers, I see they develop the products without even sometimes taking note of the regulatory requirements. So they always it's natural for every scientist to believe that he has the best product. Okay, and that's a very good attitude. The only problem is you may have the best product, but if you cannot actually satisfy the regulatory requirements, then that's going to be a problem because you will not have any marketing authorization within which to commercialize their product or even to use it. Now, local, it's always nice to, in my 2 decades now, more than 2 decades in this area, I must admit I've gotten frustrated. I've really supported biotechnology in terms of particular GMOs at the start, primarily because not because of all these multinationals, but because of the potential to develop crops that we really need, coming out of the public research institutions. Unfortunately, I haven't seen much. I mean, it's already 2 decades, you know. And the problem is sometimes they cannot to a certain extent, it's always good to say, Filipinos now prefer local, etc. But the problem is, and this is a hard fact that every technology developer must face if you're in the healthcare sector, it's more difficult for you, for us to hurdle the regulatory system, the regulatory requirements. Number one, some of the regulatory requirements are not well defined, particularly when you talk about herbal drugs, herbal supplements, etc. And if you want to make any claims with respect to your supplements, then the regulatory framework is not that very well defined on that one. Number two, the clinical evidence that is required for doctors to accept, if you're coming up with a supplement, yes, or herbal supplement or herbal drug, but the regulatory, the amount of clinical evidence that the doctors will be acceptable short of a clinical trial, a thorough clinical trial that like the one you have with drugs has not yet been well defined, even here in the Philippines. The other thing also is that we're at a disadvantage because the regulatory cost is significant. It's not a pittance. Regulatory, whether it's a ventilator that you want to develop, whether it's a diagnostic product that you want to develop, you have to undergo a lot of tests. And the reality is, if your market is just the Philippines, then that's a problem because in no way can you justify the cost that you're incurring with respect to regulatory just for a market like the Philippines. Although the domestic consumption is quite significant, but it's not enough unless we do two things. Number one, you have your eyes also on the export market, which means also have to know the regulatory requirements outside, and you have to know the market outside. Or number two, we have to have a different regulatory framework with respect to products which are developed in the Philippines. Your basic disadvantage is because anyone who comes in with an imported product already can comply because they've done the clinical trials, they've done the testing, they've done everything, and that cost is being distributed among the different markets that they're operating. So when somebody submits a registration dossier to FDA just looks at the submissions. And these have been clinical trials done elsewhere in India, in the US, in Europe, etc. Whereas us here, you'll have to spend for it here. So basically, when we speak of regulatory, it's not just the regulatory framework that Secretary Padulin is talking about. But in general, the regulatory framework, one has, if you're developing products, you have to, at the start, be very, very familiar with the regulatory requirements. What clinical evidence, what technical dossiers are needed from you, etc. Otherwise, don't start it. Because otherwise, you'll just be wasting a lot of money with coming up with a product that you can probably put in your resume, but cannot be utilized in any form. So that's one. Number two, before I pass on to the other one, in terms of a biotech system, we have all the elements needed for the system, and we continue to develop all these elements. The only problem is the elements are not talking to each other. And again, not talking, they're talking to each other, but they're not listening to each other. Many times we have told the scientists, guys, you really have to work on the regulatory framework. You have to work on the supply chain. When you look at the market, you just don't look at, you always have to look at the competing solutions, the existing competing solutions. Why is your solution better than the existing one? Is it lower cost? And therefore you can compete on the price point, or is it superior than the existing one? In which case you can have a price premium, but you can talk about the product superiority. So just don't look at there are many things. Coming up with a product is one thing, being successful is another. Because you have to look at marketing, you have to look at the distribution channel, you have to look at the competition. The competition will not stay put once you enter. They will always come up with something in order to defeat you and to nip you in the bud. And as I said, the first step for them to nip you in the bud is a regulatory framework. It's a regulatory, because they will question everything that you've done. So with respect to microbiology, I just want to react to Secretary Padula. Yes, I agree fully, sir, that microbiology is needed, especially now, because now you cannot do laboratory testing now, because involving microorganisms, unless you have a microbiome background. And we're very, very supportive of that. UNILAB is very supportive in encouraging universities, number one, to develop their microbiology departments, and number two, to develop their chemistry and biology departments, because those are really needed by industry at the moment. And if you want to compete outside, it has to be science-based, whether it's ingredients, natural ingredients, or natural supplements. It has to be science-based. There is no room for anecdotal evidence outside. If you want to tap the export market, it has to be science-based. And the role of the scientist is to come up with the researches. Fine, I'm not asking the scientists anymore to come up with the marketing program, etc. But please come up with the experiments and the researches that are published in peer-reviewed journals, which can then be used later on to craft the marketing materials. Because those are the things that will be needed if you want to tap the international market. So it has to be science-based. So thank you very much, and I'll have to pass it on to you, Vic.
Vic, you're muted, Vic.
Oh yeah, sorry. So I was thinking probably we have to pass this on, address the question to Maui Arroyo, because I think what Joey essentially has highlighted is the gap of how to translate the research into the marketplace. And I think this is where you could come in, being the first person essentially started the biotech consulting in the Philippines from our days way back when. All right, Maui, are you there?
Hello, everybody. I do want to echo what Joey said. That I mean, when you think of, so the original question, is there a biotech industry or a biotech ecosystem in the Philippines? There is. It's very similar to our geography. We have islands of success that aren't connected. So you can always, the shorthand or the mnemonic that I always use when I explain what the biotech industry or biotech ecosystem is in any country is ICAGE, right? So that's investors, corporations, academia, government, and entrepreneurs. And we're all talking at each other. Well, 70% of the time we're talking at other people and not talking to each other. I also echo what Joey said, that I after 16 years of trying to facilitate tech transfer and everything, it's frustrating. But I also don't want our scientists are already doing 300,000 things, right? They're paid to teach.
Good point.
They're paid to do research, and they have to publish or perish. They have to commercialize and patent. When you have a science communication thing, you're talking to a scientist as well. And by the way, could they possibly do admin work and sit on a purchasing committee? You want to add entrepreneurship again. I want people like Carlo to focus on his PhD, right? For people who really want to become startup entrepreneurs, that's great. But I think the focus, and I have to say that DOST, I know USEC Dev has just joined us, DOST, DA, even DTI is now cooperating, and they've really been doing a good job on the supply side of getting scientists to become more, I would say, entrepreneurial savvy. I think the problem would be the demand side. First of all, most of the people who have money in this country, 87% of our GDP goes to 19 families. And 19. So that's the definition of an economic oligarchy. The people who own the money are OMGs. They're old mainstream guys. They've made their money in retail and real estate, right? We really have to focus on the teaching of giving scientific literacy to the COOs, the child of owners, right? The Robina Gokongways and the third generation, Jaime Urquijo, Sobel de Ayala, that sort of thing. Also, we have to have more innovative ways to invest in our biotech industry, which is why I got so frustrated. I started my own impact investment fund. So I really think that we have to encourage more investment. And working together with scientists. I think scientists, through the LIFT program that DOS has done, the Leaders in Innovation Fellowship, which we also run in cooperation with DOST and the Newton Agham program of the British government at AIM, it teaches scientists to at least understand the concerns of business and to at least speak the same language. But once again, I want the scientists to stay in the lab because that's where there's
fair enough.
Right. I think what you have to do on the demand side is you don't invest in something you don't understand. Right. Sec Pernia was really, I have to thank him publicly for his service as NEDA chief. He was really doing the best that he could. I'm looking forward, though, to the Startup Venture Fund, which the guidelines of which DTI will be releasing in the next month or so, which would invest in startups. Because what I want to do is to give people like Joey at Unilab better deal flow, right? Because it's trickling towards him and it's not quality, right? You have so many people who die in the early stage. Right. Aside from that, we have to unlock private sector capital, such as the Agri-Agra law. The Agri-Agra law mandates that 25% of a bank's total loanable assets should be invested in agriculture. And if I'm not mistaken, aquaculture and marine is also covered by the Agri-Agra law. Most of the commercial banks in this country are not compliant with that law. And as a result, they pay a penalty every year. So Banco de Oro, for example, which is non-compliant, pays $29.9 million per year rather than invest 25% of their loanable assets in agriculture. That's insane. That's the size of my impact fund, right? $20 million, you can do so much with that. And for me, a penalty is 0% return. What's the difference if we invest it in Carlo and Dr. Robles and all people who presented, and let's say that it fails? What's the difference? It's a penalty. You get 0% return. I'm not even asking for the total, right? Why don't we give it to Neil so that he can expand, right? Loan it to Neil, not give it, sorry, Neil, right? Why don't we loan it to Plantex, right? So they can expand their operations.
I'll ask later. Yeah, that we could bring that later, and could probably explain
we'll bring that up later, but I have several solutions for that. But the demand side also, we also have to have innovations on the demand side. And it's very rare to have scientists who understand, like Vic and I do, the economic side and Joey as well. So I'm going to pass it on to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maui. Very helpful. And actually, I think you hit a good point that I think the expectation in the Philippines, the scientist now has to start companies. And I think that's too much of a burden. And that's where I would like to bring in Richard, because I think Stride is doing something around that area. So Richard, could you comment on your efforts at Stride?
Yeah, I think you've heard from Sec Pernia about the linkages part, no? And I think Maui talked about it also. Biotechnology, I came from big pharma also. It's not for the faint of heart, right? This business. And there's so many issues and the difficulties, regulatory, we heard it. How do you create a team? How do you scale? That's why, it's easy to say, let's do linkages and let's partner, but you really have to. There's no choice. There's this whole different skill sets that you need to be successful. So to your question, we're working with DOST here also, and how do we sort of bring market validation to our researchers early, doing customer discovery. So just similar to what the LIF program that Maui mentioned. With the Stride program, we're working with DOST on that. It's really about asking the questions early to our researchers about market viability and finding partnerships early. So I think that's it. Even for the 3 industry partners that we're talking today that were under the Stride program, PBARD, Pentex, and Urbanext. It's really, at the research stage, getting the industry involved, setting industry timelines and sort of metrics, and even DOST and DTI looking at those metrics also, right? And making the academe, always stick to the science, as Joey was saying, do the science-based work. But, if you have to do the marketing, maybe find a team partner for that. We don't want to transform every researcher into a business person, right? So that FEC program we're running, Filipino Innovation Entrepreneurship Core, is one effort. There are many efforts here, but it's really, again, my message here is, talk to your customers early. I think that's something for the academe, but for industry, you have to also have a stake. To what Maui was saying, we want, when we talk to these partners early in our research partnerships, industry has to have a stake even early on. If it's time, resources, because it's not something that you just do for fun, right? And so I think that's something we have to stress in terms of early partnerships.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, Richard. So I'll probably pass it on to Gani. Gani, in terms of what, as industry partner, have you looked at partnerships? I think you mentioned it in our earlier presentation, I think a different session, and probably could comment on this particular session.
Yeah, so actually, Vic, I tend to get on my soapbox. My soapboxes on these things which comes from government leadership, hyper-regulation, and lack of talent. So I kind of wanna go back to what Maui was saying, because what she said kind of struck a different point of view, which is demand. It looks like from a customer or patient perspective, we don't have that in the Philippines in terms of biotech products, and also funneling basically the funds to get that ecosystem going. I'm kind of speaking from so my other role is I'm sitting on the vaccine expert panel with Nina Gloriani, and one of the struggles we're looking at for COVID-19 is the supply when the vaccines finish phase 3. And basically, we don't have any manufacturing capacity here in the Philippines. So we're going to have to rely on importing those the supply. So if you're looking at 2021 for vaccines, we're probably not going to get that until late 2021 or 2022. So how do we kind of maybe throw it back to Maui? Is it fair for me to say that there's just a lack of government leadership? When you look at Cuba, I mean, Cuba did so much in the 1960s, 1970s, and Fidel Castro basically gave them a blank paycheck to go shopping, right? Can you comment on that, Maui? Just a bit.
Well, not to tread on, of course, Yusek Gev's territory and Earth territory, but I actually think that the government is doing as much as it can, because the private sector has to pick up the slack. I think part of the reason we don't have that is because 70% of the income made in malls is from remittances, right? And 8 out of 10 OFWs don't have savings. So my suggestion would be to just start a diaspora bond, right? It serves as an investment vehicle. 1/3 of it can be invested in Philippine stocks. 1/3 of it can be lent to bigger companies, for medium-sized companies to get bigger and expand and increase quality. Do you know that there is no patis left produced in the Philippines because we can't meet ASEAN quality standards? If you go to the grocery, you will see Lawrence patis flavor, right? Because we can't label it as patis. For lozenges, pharma-grade liquid sucrose, we import. And yet we have liquid sucrose for halls and candy, right? It's you have to invest in medium-sized industries also. And then 1/3 can go to the startup venture fund, which makes fund investments in venture capital, in funds like mine, and then we invest according to national priorities. It gives it, and it taps people we have so much Philippine diaspora, and not all of them are domestics, right? People, I'm not just talking about OFWs, I'm talking about Filipinos investing in Filipinos, like the Koreans did. Korea was a backwater after the war. It's the one thing we haven't tried. The problem is we don't trust each other. We don't trust each other, and you don't invest in things that you don't trust, right? It's an effort to buy things that are Filipino. So
Gani, let me just sorry, this is Joey. Let me just respond, because you mentioned Cuba, and I'm a big fan of the Cuban healthcare system. And I've been to Cuba 3 times. I've been to Cuba 3 times, And the secret of the Cuban healthcare, and this is a lesson that is important for us, especially as we face this COVID crisis. It is the focus of the Cuban healthcare system is really on the promotive and preventive. That's why they're very, very strong in vaccines, because the focus as a result of the U.S. embargo, they have no access to many of the medicines, so they will have to do it on their own. And in fact, when I visited the biotech centers in Cuba, when they were explaining it to me, there was even an anecdote that Fidel Castro would be there daily, when the equipment were when the pieces of equipment were delivered, and he would study the manuals and really even talk to the scientists in terms of how do you operate this, and are you sure you installed it properly, and all these things. So there was, as probably out of the situation because of the circumstances at that time, there's an embargo, they have no access to medicines, they were forced to go into the preventive side of healthcare and community-based healthcare, which hopefully we, as a result, I always want to look at the bright side of things. So COVID crisis, I think if there's anything that did come out of this is the importance of healthcare. Healthcare suddenly has become political center stage now at political center stage. And I hope that if you look at the universal healthcare law, all the things, that elements that it wants to set up, number one, for instance, community-based. Slowly, I think we will go on community-based healthcare as people become very scared now to go to the hospitals. So you will have to go, focus on the preventive, because right now, there's no vaccine actually in sight. So your best defense is really taking care of yourself. And the third one is the use of technology. Before this, telemedicine, we've tried this about 10 years ago, trying to do it, and remote diagnostics. And the doctors were not receptive to it at all. And now suddenly everyone is into it. At least most everyone. So there are certain elements now. As Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. And I think this is an opportunity for us, especially and now you also see a lot of groups coming up with their own ventilators, coming up with their own possible solutions here. So let's encourage that. With respect to industry here, I think there's a greater now openness on the part of other industry, particularly, especially those who used to be not in the healthcare sector, to consider things in healthcare. So investments wise, I think we're very, very much open to investments. The only problem is, as with any other business, you have to look. Hindi naman pwede ng guys. I've always done a lot of things para sa bayan. The only problem is for something to be sustainable, you cannot pitch on a basic para sa bayan. So you have to show it sustainable, and the way to show it sustainable, you have to have the bottom line. You have to show bottom line. You have to know exactly what you're doing. So here, I think there's a lot of things. I know for Unilab, for instance. By the way, United Laboratories is now, we're into hospitals, we're into clinics, in biotech. We have facilities, of course, outside the Philippines as well, manufacturing and even marketing organizations. In China, we have a biotech facility, and this is the Shanghai United Biotech company, And it was a facility that we invested in about more than 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's producing somatropin and human cholera and oral cholera vaccine. But it started as a partnership with Shanghai University. And so the technology for those actually came from Shanghai University, Shanghai University. And then eventually it became, commercial. But it suffered for several years. It was red bottom line for a lot of years. And the reason why we had to do this, because if you want to go to China and establish a business in China, some foothold, you have to partner with a local institution. This is the same thing now in Indonesia. We talk about drug development here, pharma zones, etc. But guys, why would somebody from India, an Indian company, establish a company here on the drug manufacturing here, or somebody outside establish a biotech facility here? Put it this way, they have economies of scale in their own respective countries. So that's an advantage already. But if they want a base in Southeast Asia, certainly Philippines will not be the base. I think we're the only foolish guys who continue to invest in manufacturing here. You know why? Because Indonesia has this PD-1010. PD-1010 means that if somebody is already manufacturing the product there, the drug product there, you cannot import it into Indonesia. So that's protectionist, very, very protectionist. But they have it. So if you have a company who wants to establish base in Southeast Asia, I will do it in Indonesia. You know why? Because then that's 200, more than 200 million Indonesians. It's a market, and then I can just export to the Philippines. We all say about protect Philippines, etc. Enjoy industry, buy Filipino, etc. But guys, we need to show also. We need also to see what others are doing. We're not looking at a protectionist. No, certainly protectionism. I'm against it, special treatment. But at the regulatory stage, for instance, I think there should be a separate regulatory pathway for products which have been developed here in the Philippines.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there has to be a regulatory, because the Filipino scientists who develop that are already a big disadvantage, especially if the products are coming from public research institutions. They don't have the money to go through all these regulatory processes that are required, which are sometimes tailor fit for foreign companies, but actually don't have any bearing on Filipino companies, and that's considered a barrier now.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so thank you, Joey.
Vic,
Very good. Yep.
Vic,
Thanks.
thanks, Joey and Maui, for that conversation. Just to address quickly, 1 minute 30 seconds for your partnership question. So actually, one of the things we're looking at, so we're always talking about industry academe partnerships, right? And one of the things we've been looking at are pre-competitive and pre-commercial partnerships with our industry partners. So just to give a shout out to Joey, who's also leading the effort with Unilab on this, especially with the natural products program. We've been informally meeting, a couple of times now, and maybe Joey, we can include the biotech guys like Homer and Carlo in the next sessions. So that's ongoing. It's still informal. And hopefully we can formalize those partnerships in the future. So going back to you, Vic.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to first recognize Yusek Kev joined us already. So, but before I go to Yusek Kev, I'll probably have Annalyn Lopez, project director for the biotech, and probably shift a bit discussion on the agriculture side. Probably get an overview what DA or Department of Agriculture programs you have, or biotech programs you have, and in part how you're going to develop that in partnership with private companies.
Thank you, Sir Vic. And as this is my first time to speak, allow me to thank PAASE for organizing this activity. And thank you to all the presenters for remarkably interesting company introductions. I am pleased to know more about the emergence of these startup biotech companies in the country and the promising partnerships with the public research institutions and other private companies. Let me go back to the question of, does a biotech ecosystem exist in the Philippines? And there is, and I echo the views of my co-panelists, that it needs a lot of nurturing and to be able to reach the level of vibrancy that we want for it to be at. It is the level of vibrancy that is characterized by the growth and, of course, as others pointed out, the importance of domination of local startups and companies. And again, as others have pointed out, the synergistic or the symbiotic partnership between the public and the private sectors. So in the agriculture sector, specifically in crop biotechnology, the industry is dominated by multinational companies, which develop and eventually commercialize, and I'm talking about transgenic crops. And we have a farming sector which harvests these transgenic crops. In particular, so far, the first and the only commercialized biotech crop in the country is the BT and herbicide-tolerant corn in over 600,000 hectares of farm areas. Other farmers utilize planting materials developed using other biotech tools. Unfortunately, as others have already pointed out, there is not much private-public biotech R&D partnerships. most of the biotech research work is initiated by public institutions, and the role of the private sector is mostly providential, specifically providing the gene constructs or training in some cases. But on the positive side, we can name like two successful partnerships that have paved the way towards product development, and these are BT eggplant and golden rice. So gene constructs were provided by private companies as donation to the public sector for to develop a public good in the end. So hopefully this would finally be able to reach product commercialization stage. In addition, I am pleased to learn today about private public sector partnerships in technology and product development. For instance, the projects undertaken by L Biotech and PAB-RD. And indeed, there's a lot of potential for development and nurturing because of the needs of the times. We are confronted with challenges that looking at agricultural innovations is a highly viable option. Uh, the current situation has highlighted the critical role of agriculture and food production system, and agriculture has never been this appreciated before, and it is a very welcome good indication of more public investments pouring in. Our dynamic agriculture secretary is very vocal in his advocacy on supporting local industries, and his priority of pursuing export development and be deliberately strategic in these areas by, of course, developing industry roadmaps that aim to strengthen the supply chain and taking into consideration as Attorney Ochave pointed out, the import regulations as well in the foreign countries. Let me contribute a little about the critical role of having a regulatory policy environment, as this was already touched by Dr. William Badolina and Attorney Ochave. So it is really essential to have a regulatory system that is, as we always say, justifiably strict, but does not cripple agricultural innovations. I remember that there was an APEC baseline study which highlighted the costs of regulatory compliance, and this accounts for almost 50% of the costs of developing a genetically engineered product from gene discovery to R&D stage. And over the years, the cost of compliance to obtain regulatory approval has been high and increasing. So in excuse me. So in 2007, the compliance cost of the compliance costs for insect resistance corn was about, according to the study, it's $7 to $15 million, and this has appreciated by more than 30% in 2014 and 2016. And this is very critical as the increasing overall cost of developing and delivering genetically engineered products limits the type of innovators that can bring a product to market and the type of innovation that reach the markets. Of course, this is addition to the cost of delays and the long process of regulations. I share the same information with Dr. Padolina that there are efforts undertaken by the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines to review the substance and implementation of the joint department circular regulating the environmental release of genetically engineered crops. The same committee is also at the stage of determining the policy approach covering new plant breeding techniques, which include gene editing and their products. In addition, the Department of Agriculture, led by the Bureau of Animal Industry, is currently drafting the biosafety regulations for GM animals, so that we can be able to access this technology and utilize this for our advantage. So we hope that, regulatory efficiency, including bringing down regulatory costs to reasonable levels, will be achieved in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalyn. Yeah, so I'll pass on to Yusek Gev. Yep, so probably ask Yusek Gev, I think programs from DOST in supporting, I know you have some grant programs supporting small, medium industry, and I think one of the beneficiaries as well is with us is Urbanext, I think with the BIST program, and probably could expand on that and other programs probably, which would help our private companies. Naka-mute, unmute.
Thank you very much
Yeah,
for that question. And good morning to everyone. The Business Innovation through Science and Technology for Industry was created so that the government can share in the risk that needs to be taken when a company starts doing R&D. Talaga pong our industries, especially the small and medium, are afraid of doing R&D because of the costs and the uncertainty involved. This program provides up to 70% of funding for equipment that will be used for R&D, cannot be used for production. Most of the proposals which we have received, umpisa kunyari research and then it becomes production equipment. That is not allowed. So far, we have only one successful BIST applicant. This is Urbanext to purify ingredients for herbal supplements. We are hoping that we'll get more. So that one is the difficult entry program that we have. Second one that is easier entry is what we call the Collaborative Research and Development to Leverage the Philippine Economy, or CRADL. In CRADL, the industry persons will declare the problem to be solved. The academe will solve the problem using R&D. DOST will fund the academic institution up to 5 million and can last up to 3 years. It can be shorter, it can be cheaper. And we require the industry partner to have a stake of 20% in cash or in kind for the project. And what we have seen was that there are some fantastic companies that have joined the program. My favorite is EHOS Resource. It's a banana plantation. They started with just 10 hectares, and then before the project ended, 100 hectares na yung gusto nila, because they were able to save a lot, millions in the pesticide because of the IoT and AI application made by University of Southeastern Philippines. What we have seen is that in the beginning, we had only 20 cradle proposals and so on, but we made a call from June to July 15, just recently, requiring only proposals for the new normal. And we received 123 proposals. And we think that it's now obvious to the industry that partnerships with academe for R&D is a very good way to go. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Yusek Kev. I'd like to now turn the tables, probably ask our presenting companies if you have something to ask to the panel. Seem to be well knowledge as well connected as well. So anybody who wants to start first? Homer, probably Neil. Oh, Neil, there you go.
I'll let everyone first.
Look, thank you again to everybody for participating this morning and for the few minutes of talking that I got to do. With regard to these government funding programs like BIST and from the DA, the ACPC program as well, and SureAid, the applications can be lodged, and I think in the case of both of these, Plentex has lodged an application for BIST, which Vic is shepherding for me. And we've also lodged an application with ACPC. Perhaps if the relevant authorities on the call could inform me about the processes for these things, because whilst the documents are fairly easy to complete and provide the information for applications, the process for reply and for getting a resolution or an outcome from the application seems to be ill-defined. We've had no communication so far on those two applications. So perhaps if we can get an update on how the process works and what we should expect. Thank you.
So I'll pass it on to Annalyn and Yusek Kev, whoever wants to take it first.
I can reply.
Okay, yeah.
We have a 40 working day process from beginning until end, from the moment you submit the complete documentation until we tell you the decision of DOST. And so far, we have been able to reach, achieve that commitment of 40 working days. Thank you.
Vic, I have a question.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah, the first question I want to address to Yusek Gev. Is there a database or a venue where industry players like or small medium enterprise can actually talk and know what are out there? Because one of the things that Secretary Pernia raised is that these activities are not publicized and it's not known. If it wasn't for the COVID-19 pandemic, I wouldn't be able to talk to Vic Ilag about their company. So is there a venue where companies like this can actually talk together, share reagents, share their thoughts, so we can move our researches forward faster and faster? I know this venue like PAASE, APAMS would be a great one, but is there one, or could we actually make a venue where we all these innovators can meet together and find, like we have here in the US, like the BIOS convention, we can actually connect to people and then help each other in their projects?
May I reply?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the DOST, we have the National R&D Conference every year, where we present some of our researchers, and then some of them they present by poster. But most of our researchers are today or in the CPC. And we have pockets of what we call technology tracks for days, where you can go there. It's like a marketplace for partnering between academia and industry. We bring there the researchers who have research outputs that are ready for commercialization or even pre-commercialization. So we do that on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah. My second question.
May I also add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. As for the DA, we have the Bureau of Agricultural Research is regularly hosting technology forum. I think it's every the month of August or October, if I'm not mistaken. And we also celebrate annually the National Biotech Week, wherein we really invite our technology innovators, our public institutions, and the private companies to celebrate with us and network with each other and connect all these industry players together. Also, let me highlight that we are working on a convergence initiative with DOSTP card, Bureau of Agricultural Research, and SHED to come up with a database of all of our. It's basically an information sharing platform, wherein we will put the information on the ongoing research that all of us are supporting, so that other researchers can be updated or can be better informed about the technology and product development in the pipeline, as well as for the private companies to scan the available research projects on which they can have partnership with public research institutions.
Yeah, thank you, Annalie. Yeah.
May I just add to that? And I'm very happy that you mentioned that, Annalie. It's a program for the agriculture R&D. We have an existing portal for health, which is called FERN, which is already complete. So you can actually look at the research that have been done if you are interested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Dr. Willie Padulina, you raised your hand.
Sir, you're muted, sir.
I'll unmute.
Just one question for those who might want to answer. It's very simple. Is it cheaper to do research in the Philippines? What is the cost?
Okay, so who wants to take a stab at that?
Um, Sir,
Yeah,
sir, may I
Omar.
answer that
Yeah,
question?
Omar, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
way, Dr. Padalina was my professor in STS when I was in UPLB. Hello, sir. You probably don't
Hello.
remember me. It was 150 students in your class. But anyway, I think to answer Dr. Padalina's question, it's very expensive to do research in the Philippines because of reagents and procurement. So, and what's another problem is the changes in prices from of importing capital equipments from other countries to the Philippines is ridiculously priced. So it's basically sometimes it's doubled. And I think we need to address those. And one company that I actually admire is that, for example, Nanopore sequencing, Oxford Nanopore, wherever you go in the world, the price is the same. It's the same. I hope it's going to be like this for every companies that we deal with. But
Is it because mid distribution, probably because of the presence of local distributors, then on top of importation taxes?
that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, it's very high. It doubles. That's why conducting research is very expensive.
But in terms of people, though, my personal experience, and I think it breaks my heart. Actually, I think the quality of the people, the RAs, I mean, are very, very good. They're very dedicated, in spite of even not being paid for months, because oftentimes they're in projects, and it's really difficult. But you could see their determination to do.
Yeah,
job is really good.
Yeah, we have the technical expertise in the Philippines.
But yeah,
we just have to nurture
stuff. Okay, Maui, you wanna raise you got your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that quickly. As an investor, and I've done pretty well at this. I've made $1 million or so investing in the Philippines. It's not so much the amount that I'm worried about. It's quality, and Filipinos are I'd bet on a Filipino anytime. Not so sure about our bureaucracy, but these are problems we can do away with better policy and better implementation, right? I think one of the struggles, though, is that before we can get to genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, we have to think about people in Lopez Quezon living on less than $1 a day, right? I mean, it's not sexy, but the thing to do there is to make activated charcoal. If possible, make graphene from coconut shells, but it's not sexy technology. We have to benefit first the people who are living there. It will take care of all our first world problems in Manila, traffic because people have more jobs there, peace and order because if you have everybody in Mindanao be part of the value chain, they'll work together. So it's going to be unsexy things like canneries and fruit processing that we need to invest in also, because the accusation that I'd still like to consider myself somewhat of a scientist is that we're so far in our ivory towers, we're not really, helping the average Filipino. 68% of our poor are farmers and fisher folk, and as much as we want to give them water quality testing and things, it has to be made not only affordable but understandable, right? Like the diagnostics of Dr. Robles, or sorry, not Dr. Robles, the dairy pala siya. The diagnostics of other people. There has to be something done, and it might not be sexy in the get go, but in order to get to all the omics and higher tech, I think we have to make first investments in the non-sexy things like rice mills and tomato processing plants.
Thanks, Maui. How about Joey? You want to make a comment? You got your recognized, Joey?
Yeah. Thank you, Vic. With respect, I'm looking at it from a private sector perspective. I think, sir, the Dr. Padulina, the cost of, I'm looking at it in terms of product development now, because I've looked at our cost here in terms of I've also tried to engage quite a number of institutions or groups outside the Philippines for product development. In other words, contracted out some of the product development, thinking of contracting them out. I think in terms of costs, we're okay. We're competitive, at least in the private sector. No, I think we're competitive. There are some elements of the cost where probably doing it in the Philippines a little bit more expensive, but there's other costs which would more than compensate for that. No. So bottom line, I think when it comes to product development, Philippines is still competitive, especially as was mentioned earlier. It's the quality of the workforce as well, the quality of the people that is our best advantage.
That's true.
With
Yeah.
respect to the reagents, I know that's a constant problem of people in the public research institutions. So I think that's one area where they need help. Especially have to go through all these bidding processes and all these things. It's the purchasing. Process that really has to be paid attention to, especially in the public research institutions. For us, kasi in the private sector, it's easy for us. And sometimes we have the volume, so we can command the price. When it comes to reagents and other things.
Dr. Vic?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Just,
Dr. Ernie, yeah.
Just a couple of comments on the issue of cost. I think there have been complaints in the past about procurement, procurement by scientists, like getting things through customs, for example. It can take, it can take really lengthy. It's a very long process, and also they have to pay duties.
Yeah.
I think maybe this, as someone said, let's not waste a good crisis. Maybe this is the time to to let the DOF and customs people realize that we really need science to address not just health issues, but other things that we have been talking about here. So that's one. So maybe, well, when I was in NEDA, I tried to, let customs people and DOF understand the importance of science and, research, but that did not, that I wasn't successful yet at the time, but maybe this time with the crisis, we might be more successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the matter of regulation, Dr. Padulina mentioned the issue of product regulation. Perhaps we can have some kind of understanding or agreement with U.S. with our U.S. counterparts and also those in ASEAN, because there are several levels of regulation. I understand, and maybe for the first few stages, if these are already cleared, we can perhaps for the first few stages, couple of stages, we can already rely on what had passed the regulatory stage in the US or in ASEAN. But maybe for the last stage or the final stage, which has to do with safety and efficacy, then that's where we need re-evaluation, re-regulation in the Philippines. So in that sense, we are going to shorten the process of product regulation. Just a thought.
Thank you very much. Neil.
If I could just add a couple of observations from a non-Filipino business point of view. The two things which have caused us delay and have been quite difficult are funding and then government approvals. In the funding space, we're quite unique. We're an Australian company that doesn't come with an awful lot of capital, and we're looking for funding partners to develop our projects. Now, getting back to what Maui said, we are developing projects that will help the small Filipino, the rice farmer, the fisherman, the person without work in North Tacloban. We're offering potential there to do that. But we're unique, and we're not coming with a lot of money to build something. We're trying to find a Filipino partner to do that. Now, we found that with Agri-Nurture, but it's been quite a long process to deliver that. And Filipino financiers didn't understand a white man from Australia not having money, and people in Australia didn't understand why a white man from Australia was investing in the Philippines. So we were kind of caught in a midway vortex that didn't have an outcome. But we've navigated that and we've got there. The other thing is the government regulations are there's many government departments trying to help you get things done, and that help can sometimes take a long time and sometimes be difficult to get. I remember a case of Western Mining in Australia who went from discovery to commercial production in 18 months in 1968. That is now impossible to do. And I think we've certainly seen that with our projects in the Philippines, which are, like Maui said, low tech, real world, and they will provide a real outcome for people, for work and food and for opportunity in Tacloban and beyond. And our R&D, I think, could be groundbreaking for the Philippines, particularly our protein enhancement Pro-NK. That could actually be the technology which gets rid of your soybean import and improves the health of stock and aquaculture. So we're trying to get there. What we need is support from financiers, and we need to have a better way of navigating governments. Thank you.
But probably, Neil, was it worth mentioning a pending, you had a loan application for about how many years already? But everything, you want to mention that, or?
DVP has been an interesting group to deal with. Very, very keen to help early on, but their internal process is very, very slow. We think we're getting close to an answer, but it's been nearly 2 years to do all that process. So the secretary who was talking about a 40-day process, I look forward to 40-day result on our BIST process, ma'am, and hopefully that will be a result.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Okay, so we got almost 12:30. I think we pretty much covered like the first two questions. So probably just to wrap it up, I'll probably go through the panel again with the last question and probably with a couple of minutes for each of you. So with identifying now the stakeholders and what do you think are their roles and to sustain such an industry or ecosystem, or more like a next steps, because I think the goal of this is we would like to make recommendations to the via PAASE. And I think I've highlighted certain points. I'll just mention here and then you might add some. I think as pointed out by Dr. Ernie, so interaction of government and industry and the focus on self-sufficiency. And there's this thing about being on the regulatory side, which is a critical component, especially focusing on a product-based rather than process-based. The elements are present. And then in terms of sorting out, I think, regulatory issues, especially in importation and bringing in things together. So if you could add on to that, and let's start with Dr. Ernie Pernia, Secretary Pernia. Hello.
Sir, you're muted, sir.
At the outset, I mentioned about we seem to be hiding our light under a bushel. Our scientific and research light under a bushel. And we really need to publicize what the scientific community are doing. And also, well, DOST have been carrying out many activities. They have been talking about in conferences that I was at. They mentioned the Secretary Boy de la Peña mentioned so many startups, but these are not known. And I think we really need to publicize these things, sensitize people, make them cognizant about the importance of these activities. And maybe we need to have to partner also with the media. I think there must be some people in the media who are science oriented or are familiar with what science does and what research and development can deliver. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yep. So Dr. Willie?
Yeah, my suggestion is to really create a more dynamic national innovation system. Our discussions indicate it's a system approach. You cannot just bring in brilliant scientists and have a very defective or weak regulatory system, or a very weak material supply system, or a very expensive material supply system. All of this will have to be tweaked. But at the end of the day, it's the politicians that hold the magic wand. When they say, why do you keep doing R&D? That's been expressed actively by senators. Then you really, diminish the importance of the national innovation system. They are included in the national innovation system, even if they are not part of the National Innovation Council. They created the law. So they should encourage it. But when you hear negative remarks, that sends a very poor signal. So Secretary Peña, it's not just publicizing it, but the political leadership enhancing the role of R&D and the creation of new knowledge and support for the knowledge creation in, institutions, the OST R&D institutions, the universities, etc., etc. These are very important to remain competitive and viable as a nation. Look at what we are experiencing now. And finally, I think we are at the cusp of a talent deficit. We don't have enough talent in residence.
Yep.
I appreciate very much the collaboration we have with our diaspora. That's very much appreciated. But we need talents in residence who will be able to respond and do hands-on intervention at the time they are needed, before events overtake us and it becomes irreversible.
Yep.
So that's just my last point. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah, Yusek Gev.
We take note of the suggestions by our esteemed and we hope that first that PAASE would support us in our bid for a Science for Change program bill, which will ensure the budget for R&D in the country. Second, that we hope that industry, they are listening and they are beginning to look at our R&D institutions and higher education institutions as sources of partnership for R&D. I hope that they would consider that seriously. And third, I hope that our esteemed scientists here and abroad will help us in communicating science to the people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Yusek. Maui? Hello, Maui. Maui still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
What is the role of each of the stakeholders? For investors, I'm going to go by iCage again. For investors, I think to have more patient capital, that's going to be a problem post-COVID. But I'm currently working with the impact with my impact fund to do blended finance, and we're working with DTI for that. I plan to talk to you, Gev and Dar, after things are more solidified. But so if you have a public-private partnership for investment, that will work because most investors now want to hang on to cash, right? Number two, for corporations, I think one of the things we should publicize is that there's also another way aside from licensing to work and to work with academia, and that's contract research or sponsored research. So that would help. For academia, God bless you. God bless you 1,000 times. I would really love it if we could focus more on basic research. People always forget that because if we only focus on applied research, it's like a school only focusing on graduation. We're going to run out of things, right? and that is the role of science, right? And I would like less of a load on scientists, and the only way you can do that is for startups and people who usually start entrepreneurship, specifically the child of owners, people who have deeper pockets, right, to actually work and have scientific literacy and work with our scientists. And for government, honestly, it's just maybe streamlining a couple of policies, both in multiple departments, and to unlock many things, like take advantage of our diaspora through existing financial, instruments. There are so many bonds or other ways to invest, especially in the rural areas where we can make a tangible, measurable impact. So essentially, I think it's the biotech ecosystem is, it's like those the baton races. You have to be able to, it's not like the other person waiting for the baton is just standing there, right? You have to be running at the same pace as the person who's coming at you. So we actually have to paddle in the same direction. And I will emphasize that it's the private sector that also has to grab an oar. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Maui. Pastor Joey? Is Joey still there?
Yeah, sorry, I'll just have to unmute myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, just a few things. Number one, I I agree with Maui, and I confirm that. I've been saying this all along as well. The scientists should stay in the laboratory. Stay in the laboratory, come up with. I mean, let's identify exact. Let's work on the KRAs which are expected of people. If you're a scientist in a university, one of the things that you're expected to do is stay in the laboratory and publish. So let's work on that. So publish, but make sure it's publication in peer-reviewed journals. And as I said, that will be important because later on that can be translated into marketing materials that are needed now in order for us to compete not just in the Philippines, but more importantly abroad. Number two, if that is the case, then you have to find a private sector partner or partners, not just investors, but private sector partners who really know the field and who can be candid with you and brutally frank with you. And tell you exactly what you're doing has been done. These are the people who can tell you, hey guys, what you're doing has been done for a long time. It's already there. Or what you're doing is a dead end. It may be good as a resume builder, but it's a dead end for if you're going to look at commercial utilization. Number three, time is of the essence. I think this has to be understood by people also working with the private sector. For the private sector, time is of the essence because they're competing in a very, very competitive field, and where the first mover sometimes will have a huge advantage. So if you have certain ideas, don't wait for it to be perfect. It's iterative. It may not be the best idea, it may not be the best product, but we improve it as we go along. Share it already, and then let's go to market, or let's at least do some prototype, some piloting, and then later on think of scaling it up. That's the way we do things, by the way, in the private sector. We have an idea, do it, go on, run away with it, and then just learn while you implement, and then improve on the product as you go along. Of course, that's not true with respect to drugs, but with respect to other products like probably the natural products and so on. And also be very, very conscious of scalability. It's always sometimes good, fashionable to talk about, this is for SMEs, etc. But in the long run, if you really want to make an impact, if you want to make a difference, then you have to grow bigger. You cannot stay like as an SME. You have to grow much bigger than that if you really want to have an impact. And the last one is, again, we go back to regulations. There has to be a concerted effort on the part of everyone, in terms of advocacy, regulatory, not just in terms of the transgenics, but also in other products like diagnostics here. Diagnostics, I mean, quite a number of people will tell you the hurdles that one has to face in terms of developing diagnostic products here, or even devices that are needed for COVID and so on and so forth. Not to mention the needs for herbal drugs. Why is it that after several decades we only have Lagundi and Sambong out there? Yeah, so those are the things that we need to think about. And it, again, it's a cliche, but it's true. It takes a village really to do this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joey. How about Annalyn? Annalyn?
Yes, thank you. I would agree with with my other co-panelists. I think I would like to highlight the important ingredients as well, an economic stimulus and investment package. This could be part of a national innovation system that Dr. Padolina mentioned. And this is to help local startups survive market competition. Another one is education system that is conducive to continuously producing a pool of talented, innovative human resources to back R&D and innovation intensity. And of course, it should be coupled with a system that is able to retain our homegrown scientists and talents. And the last one is the robust regulatory policy environment to bring down and to streamline processes, to bring down regulatory costs in technology and product development. I would also like to mention that there was a bill filed in the Senate in 2007 or 2009, which we at the Department of Agriculture, together with the Biotech Coalition of the Philippines, are now trying to revive and update to be proposed again as legislative measure. And the intention is to provide a policy framework in order to stimulate the development and growth of bio-based industries. We just started to work on this, and we will be happy to involve more private sector players to eventually improve and refine this legislative proposal to be more, relevant to their needs, and to help keep the biotechnology ecosystem running. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it on to Richard.
Yeah, I think many of my fellow panelists here, we've been talking about these issues, in the last few years, and I think I can sense all the frustration. But I think it's really about balancing what stakeholders can do from a policy and long-term structural perspective versus what we can do that are small, that we can sort of make incremental steps. So I think, other issues discussed, regulatory, demand, supply side, funding, it's something we have to work on the long term. I hope we're all not too frustrated or we get too demoralized. But I think I'll give an example. Procurement. It was brought up. Sec Pernia mentioned that it's an opportunity in the crisis to look at procurement. In fact, in the STRIDE program, we've begun to look at that, like the use of emergency procurement in the time of COVID. And we don't have all the data yet. Gani Padolina is here helping us there, but it doesn't look good that people are not really using emergency procurement even in this time of a crisis. So again, it's something we have to work on the policy side, and I think on small steps. Procurement's an example where we actually work now with individual colleges of science, the College of Science in UP, to just improve localized procurement database. So again, I just want to say that it's a balance of small steps and big policy actions, but also to echo what I think was Joey was saying, I think we have to, and I think Maui mentioned this also, we have a great quality in terms of our researchers and our science, but I think we also need a deeper bench. You have to accept that we need more, right? There's a volume issue also, even though we have a lot of good researchers. I think that's something we have to work on also in the long term. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, then Gani? Gani, are you still there?
Yes. Thanks, Vic. It's a good conversation, right? And I appreciate the different views from different panelists. I think all of us are excited to work on solving a lot of these problems, and I hope we transform that frustration energy to a more positive activation energy to fix this. So I'm encouraging a lot of the folks here to join us. If we just sit and complain, I mean, we're gonna be part of the problem, and we deserve the situation that we're in, right? So let's continue to work actively to solve some of the issues that were raised, and also help our government institutions like DOST and DA to solve these efforts. I just like to. I know there's Dr. Robles was trying to raise his hand earlier,
Yeah.
so I'd
Sorry.
like
Yeah.
to
I get
get
to
my
call him.
time
Yeah.
to him a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
just the last part I think is to culture eats strategy, and I think I wanna go back to what Sec Pernia said in his talk about the culture of mistrust, and also Maui kind of alluded to that. So I think part of the part of the part of the issue that we need to fix from a PAASE point of view,
Wala
and
pa
that
ba?
PAASE is fixing now, is also is putting in that culture of trust, so we can start building the infrastructure that will help increase R&D capability in the Philippines. Thanks, Vic.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Robles, sorry I overlooked you. Yeah, if you could have your question. You have to unmute yourself, sir.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's very nice to be involved in this panel discussion. And to, as you see, our company is a little bit different because we are dealing with a product which is very important, but we are not. At least I think the government is not really giving much attention to it because for more than 50 years now, we had been importing the milk, very important product, but we are not giving much attention to the development of this industry. Many say, well, it is cheaper to import than to produce, but it may or may not be. But the thing is, even though it is cheaper, I think it is very important that we must have some local production because it generates other industry. It's not just like, the finished product. We need to produce it on our own. And I am really, I could say, disappointed to the fact that I had been here more than 50 years and our industry is not really developing very much. And I see that it is really, I think, I'm sorry to say, but maybe the government is not really looking at it very consciously or something. I don't know what to say, but I think we need more support in this sector.
Okay, so I'll probably let Annalyn comment for it, especially I think there was a 1.5 billion peso fund, I think, for dairy. So Annalyn, you want to comment? Then we'll try to wrap it around. Yeah, wrap it up after this. Annalyn, thank you. Annalyn? Is Annalyn there?
Annalyn? She's still here. Annalyn, you have to unmute.
Annalyn? Iniwasan yata kayo, Doc Robles. Joke lang.
Joke.
Annalyn, or okay, looks like we lost connection with Annalyn.
Yeah.
All right, so I think thank you very so probably a few words. Thank you very much for. We'll try to conclude our session now. We're a bit over time, but I think we're still within the buffer. So Homer, you wanna have a few words?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to thank all the presenters, and I also want to thank all the panelists. I've learned a lot about the industry now in the Philippines, and I've learned some policies that the government has. Coming from a biotech industry, and I've been working here for close to 14 years already, and I'm very excited that I think now is the time to grow our own in the Philippines. And the way I think about it, based on what everyone said, is that there are three stakeholders. First is the scientist. Second is the industry players like either public or private. And next and third is the government. And I think the scientists should continue doing research, novel and innovative and transformative products that would address unmet needs, not only in the Philippines but also outside the Philippines, if not globally, at least in our region, such that we have to think out of the box. So, and then for the industry players like the small companies and academic and research institution, we have to be open to collaboration and linkages. We cannot do it on our own. We have to help each other. And then for the government, I think what everyone is saying is that the government has to nurture these companies and to nurture this environment such that we can actually nurture them to the point that these companies will take off, and at that point they will actually invite or encourage more investment coming from outside sources. And the government has to also streamline the processes like regulatory, registration, procurement. And with this, if scientists, industry players, and government work together to form a more comprehensive and unified approach, I think we can do it in the Philippines. And I believe in the Filipino.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Homer. And actually, I'd like to end this, and I think well taken. And for Dr. Willie, I'm actually guilty as charged as a diaspora who's supposed to go home many years ago. Actually, probably almost goes full circle. So if I go back, actually, I started my career in Munich, Germany. And this is the time when biotech was just starting. Actually, I joined the first German biotech company. I was employee number 13. And this was early days. And actually, we were collaborating with another company, a small one, who was we were developing antibodies, a totally fully synthetic antibody library. And the other company was a small company developing an bispecific antibody, which could combine a T cell with with a cancer cell. So we applied for grants for that. We got 5 million Deutschmarks, and the government supported it well. So two struggling biotech companies, at that time, no biotech industry in Germany, eventually got funded, but that was the start of it. 12 years later, 15 years later, that small biotech company was developing that bispecific antibody was developed based on the technology, what you call bispecific T-cell engagers. That company was Micromet. That was bought for $1.2 billion by Amgen in 2012, almost 15 years later. Morphosis, the company I was working with, is now like a 4 billion euro company. They had their second product approved by the FDA. And during that time, actually, when this was the development of the biotech industry, more Germans were then coming back. So that's why it's very important to keep this industry or develop this industry if we want more diasporas to come back to the Philippines and then create a productive cycle of industry and hiring more productive students as well, industry which would feed and have a strong academic community. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody and for joining us, and we will be presenting these resolutions. And thanks again, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So we have an out slide or something. Wala tayong out poster ba?
Not really.
Okay, so we sign off
Thanks,
now.
Vic.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody. It's
okay,
a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, yeah.
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye-bye.
You on
Thanks,
behalf
Neil.
of DA.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you.
Thanks, Annalyn. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Annalyn. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Gani. Thanks, Carlo.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Sir
Thanks to the
Albert.
speakers.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so the...
Wala bang picture taking, Vic?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, we should.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I
We
forgot.
forgot
Yeah,
that.
you forgot.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know how to.
I'll do a
remember-
screenshot. I'll do a screenshot.
It's chat. Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
1, 3, 2, 1.
2, 1.
Okay.
Okay. Sige. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.